What if I told you there's a lost continent older, stranger, and even more mysterious than Atlantis, hidden beneath the waves of the Pacific Ocean? For centuries, whispers of this vanished land have haunted explorers, historians, and dreamers alike. Its name, Mu, a place shrouded in myth, said to have been a cradle of advanced civilization, a paradise swallowed by the sea in a single cataclysmic night. But here's the question that keeps scholars up at night. Was Mu ever real, or is it just another tantalizing legend, a ghost story etched into the edges of human memory? Picture this: vast temples gleaming under an ancient sun, cities humming with technology we can barely comprehend, a people so advanced their knowledge might have seeded civilizations across the globe. That's the vision of Mu, a land described in cryptic texts, indigenous oral traditions, and even controversial archaeological finds. Some say its influence echoes in the pyramids of Egypt, the ruins of Mesoamerica, and the megaliths of Easter Island. Others dismiss it as pure fantasy, a romantic mirage conjured by overactive imaginations. But what if the truth lies somewhere in between? What if Mu isn't just a myth, but a puzzle missing its final pieces? This is the enigma we're diving into today, a story that blurs the line between history and legend, between science and speculation. From bizarre stone maps that hint at forgotten geography to the eerie similarities between distant cultures that should never have met, the clues are as compelling as they are controversial. And whether you're a skeptic or a true believer, one thing's certain: the mystery of Mu forces us to ask bigger questions. How much of our past remains hidden? And what happens when we dare to dig deeper? Strap in, because we're about to explore one of history's greatest unsolved riddles, a tale as deep and vast as the ocean that may have swallowed Mu whole. The story of Mu begins not with ancient ruins or whispered legends, but in the dusty libraries and feverish imagination of a 19th-century explorer named Augustus Le Plongeon. A British-American archaeologist obsessed with the Maya, Le Plongeon claimed to have cracked the code of their hieroglyphs, a feat most scholars of his time dismissed as pure fantasy. But in those carvings, he believed he'd found something startling: references to a lost continent, a land of towering cities and enlightened people swallowed by the ocean. He called it Mu, a name he insisted came straight from the Mayan texts. But here's the twist: modern linguists have since proven Le Plongeon's translations were wildly off the mark. He wasn't deciphering Mayan script so much as inventing a story, projecting his own fascination with Atlantis onto an entirely different culture. Yet somehow, his flawed theories took on a life of their own. Enter James Churchward, a British occultist in the 1920s, who spun Le Plongeon's fragments into an epic saga. Churchward claimed he discovered sacred tablets in India, written by the survivors of Mu, tablets no one else has ever seen. His books described Mu as a sprawling Pacific empire, a utopia of 60 million people, wiped out in a single night by earthquakes and tidal waves 12,000 years ago. What's fascinating isn't just the audacity of these claims, but how they stuck. Churchward's books became bestsellers, blending pseudo-archaeology with spiritualism, tapping into a post-war hunger for lost worlds and hidden wisdom. And though mainstream science dismissed Mu as fiction, the legend kept growing. You'll still hear echoes of it today in conspiracy theories, New Age beliefs, even pop culture. But here's the real question: why does Mu captivate us so deeply? Maybe because it speaks to something primal, the fear that greatness can vanish without a trace, or the hope that somewhere, buried beneath the waves or hidden in forgotten texts, lies proof we were once more than we are now. James Churchward didn't just describe Mu, he painted it as a civilization so advanced it bordered on the supernatural. According to his books, Mu wasn't just another ancient society. It was a technological marvel, harnessing energy sources we're only beginning to grasp today. He wrote of towering crystal temples that channeled cosmic forces, of flying machines and wireless communication, all powered by a mysterious energy called vril. Sound familiar? Churchward's Mu eerily predicted 20th century inventions, blurring the line between prophecy and fabrication, but his most tantalizing claim: that Mu's people possessed a spiritual unity lost to modern humanity, a society without war, greed, or inequality, governed by enlightened priests who communed with higher realms. Of course, archaeologists and historians have long dismissed Churchward's work as pure fantasy, the sacred Naacal tablets he claimed to have studied in India. No reputable scholar has ever seen them. The detailed maps of Mu's sprawling cities and intricate waterways, they appear nowhere outside his own illustrations. Even his timeline placing Mu's destruction 12,000 years ago contradicts established geological and anthropological evidence. The Pacific Ocean's floor, meticulously mapped by modern sonar, shows no traces of a sunken continent. And yet, Churchward's influence persists. Why? Because his vision of Mu tapped into a longing deeper than facts, a yearning for a golden age, a world before fall. Skeptics argue that Churchward's Mu is a classic example of pseudoscience, stitching together half-truths and outright inventions. They point to his reliance on esoteric traditions, his vague sourcing, and his tendency to ignore inconvenient evidence. But here's the irony: while his specifics crumble under scrutiny, the broader idea of a lost Pacific civilization isn't entirely far-fetched. Cultures from Japan to Easter Island share flood myths and ruins that hint at something, even if it's not the utopia Churchward imagined. The real Mu may not have been a high-tech paradise, but could it have been a real place, its story distorted by time? That's the haunting possibility that keeps the legend alive, no matter how many times science tries to bury it. So if Mu wasn't the sprawling continent described in those wild 19th century tales, could there still be a kernel of geological truth buried beneath the legend? Let's start with what we know. The Pacific Ocean is the oldest and deepest basin on Earth, its floor meticulously mapped by sonar and satellite. And here's the catch: there's simply no evidence of a sunken continent the size of Mu. Plate tectonics tells us continents don't just vanish. They shift, collide, and erode over millions of years, leaving traces in the rock record. The Pacific Plate is mostly dense oceanic crust, fundamentally different from the lighter continental crust that makes up landmasses like Africa or Australia. If a continent had sunk here, we'd see remnants, mountain ranges, granite outcrops, something. Instead, the seabed reveals only volcanic chains and abyssal plains. But what about smaller-scale disasters? Could pockets of land have vanished beneath the waves, inspiring myths of a greater catastrophe? Take the case of Doggerland, the real-life drowned landmass that once connected Britain to Europe. Around 8,000 years ago, rising seas swallowed it whole. A slow, relentless process, not a single night of destruction. Similar subsidence events have happened across the Pacific. Islands like Krakatoa or Santorini weren't just destroyed by eruptions. Their very geography was rewritten in hours. And then there's the mystery of Nan Madol, a ruined city built on artificial islets off Micronesia. Local legends say it was built by gods who caused the land to rise, a haunting echo of Mu's narrative. Could these fragmented stories point to real, localized collapses, later woven into a grander myth? Some researchers propose another twist. Mu's destruction might describe volcanic upheaval, not sinking. The Pacific Ring of Fire is the most geologically active zone on the planet, home to 75% of the world's volcanoes. A single massive eruption, like the one that obliterated Thera around 1600 BCE, could have devastated coastal civilizations, leaving survivors to describe it as the end of the world. Imagine towering tsunamis, ash clouds blotting out the sun, entire cultures scattered in their wake. It's no wonder such events birthed legends of lost lands. Here's where science and speculation collide. While geology dismisses the idea of a Pacific Atlantis, it leaves room for smaller, dramatic losses, landscapes and cultures swallowed not by a single cataclysm, but by the slow march of time and tide. Maybe Mu isn't a lie, but a mosaic of half-remembered disasters, a cautionary tale stitched together from shared trauma. After all, the ocean never forgets. It just keeps its secrets buried deeper than we can dig. Churchward's most audacious claim wasn't just that Mu existed, it was that its influence stretched across the globe, seeding civilizations from Egypt to Easter Island. He pointed to eerie similarities: pyramid-like structures in Mesoamerica, serpent motifs in both Cambodian temples and Maori carvings, flood myths echoing from the Aztecs to the Aboriginal Australians. To him, these weren't coincidences but fingerprints of a single, vanished mother culture. But here's where the plot thickens. While these parallels are undeniable, mainstream anthropology offers a far less romantic explanation: convergent evolution. Cultures separated by oceans often arrive at similar solutions to similar problems, like building stepped pyramids for stability or weaving flood myths from shared experiences of disaster. Take megalithic architecture: the massive stone heads of Easter Island, the jagged pillars of Nan Madol, the terraced temples of Bora Bora. They seem like fragments of a lost blueprint. But archaeologists argue these structures reflect universal human ingenuity, not a shared origin. After all, if you're moving giant stones without modern tools, you'll likely use log rollers, ramps, and communal labor, whether you're in Polynesia or Peru. Even flood myths, which Churchward treated as Mu's smoking gun, are better explained by humanity's collective trauma. Coastal and riverine societies from the Nile to the Mississippi recorded deluges because floods were, and still are, a recurring nightmare. Yet there's one thread even skeptics struggle to dismiss entirely: the sweet potato. Yes, the humble tuber. This South American crop somehow reached Polynesia centuries before European contact, sparking debates about pre-Columbian transoceanic voyages. Could ancient seafarers have bridged these distances, exchanging more than just vegetables? It's a tantalizing possibility, though far from proof of a Pacific Atlantis. What's clearer is how Churchward's narrative cherry-picks evidence while ignoring contradictions. For every shared symbol, there are stark divergences, like the absence of writing systems in Oceania compared to Mesoamerica's elaborate scripts. The enduring allure of Mu's cultural web lies in its simplicity. It's comforting to imagine a single, brilliant source behind humanity's greatest leaps. But the messier truth that brilliance can emerge independently again and again might be even more remarkable. After all, if a dozen isolated cultures could invent pyramids, what does that say about the universal sparks of human creativity? Maybe Mu's real legacy isn't a lost civilization, but the way its myth challenges us to see connections and disconnections in the tapestry of our past. The Naacal tablets are the cornerstone of Churchward's entire Mu narrative, but here's the problem. No one besides him has ever laid eyes on them. According to his accounts, he stumbled upon these sacred relics in the 1870s while serving as a British soldier in India. A high-ranking temple priest, he claimed, initiated him into a secretive brotherhood guarding ancient wisdom. Over years of study, Churchward learned to decipher the tablet script, which allegedly revealed the rise and fall of Mu in startling detail. But from the moment he published these claims, scholars raised eyebrows. Where were the tablets? Why hadn't any other researchers documented them? Even the temple he named, long since destroyed, left no record of such artifacts in surviving texts or local oral traditions. The absence of physical evidence isn't the only red flag. Churchward's descriptions of the Naacal script don't match any known writing system from India or the Pacific. He insisted the tablets were inscribed in a language called Nagas, spoken by Mu's elite priest class, yet linguists point out that Nagas more commonly refers to serpent deities in Hindu and Buddhist lore, not a lost tongue. Even more telling, Churchward's own drawings of the tablet symbols bear an uncanny resemblance to Mixtec and Aztec glyphs, cultures he believed were Mu's descendants. It's as if he pieced together fragments from disparate traditions, creating a collage that fit his theory rather than the facts. But let's play devil's advocate. Could the Naacal tablets have existed only to vanish like the civilization they described? After all, history is littered with lost manuscripts, the Library of Alexandria's ashes, the Mayan codices burned by Spanish priests. Perhaps Churchward's temple really did house relics later destroyed by war or neglect. Yet even if we grant that possibility, his timeline strains credulity. He dated Mu's fall to 12,000 years ago, a period when human societies were hunter-gatherers, not builders of crystal cities. And if Mu's survivors fled to India, why don't Hindu Vedas or Jain texts mention this cataclysm? The epic Mahabharata details floods and celestial weapons, but nothing resembling a Pacific super-civilization, the murkiest twist Churchward's own background. Far from the scholarly adventurer he portrayed, records suggest he spent most of his career as a colonial administrator with no formal training in archaeology or linguistics. His translations of the Naacal tablets read less like rigorous scholarship and more like spiritual allegory, brimming with references to cosmic energies and divine hierarchies, themes straight out of Theosophy, the esoteric movement sweeping Europe at the time. It's hard not to see parallels between his Mu and Madame Blavatsky's Lemuria, another invented lost land popular in occult circles. So why does the Naacal mystery endure? Because it taps into a deeper tension between faith and proof. Churchward's followers argue that absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, that some truths are passed down orally beyond the reach of academia. And while mainstream science dismisses the tablets as fabrication, their legacy lingers in the digital age. Online forums buzz with theories about suppressed discoveries, secretive monasteries, even government cover-ups. The irony, in searching for a lost civilization, we've created something just as enduring, a modern myth tailor-made for an era hungry for hidden histories. Whether the Naacal tablets were real or imagined, they've become a Rorschach test revealing less about Mu and more about our endless fascination with the idea that somewhere, buried in time, lies a truth too extraordinary to believe. Mu and Atlantis share more than just the fate of being swallowed by the sea. They're twin mirrors reflecting humanity's deepest fears and wildest dreams. Both legends speak of advanced civilizations, untold riches, and sudden, tragic ends. Both promise hidden knowledge, a glimpse of a world better than our own, lost to time. Yet their differences reveal just as much. Atlantis, first described by Plato around 360 BCE, was framed as a cautionary tale, a militaristic empire punished by the gods for its arrogance. Mu, born from 19th century speculation, took on a mystical sheen, a utopia of harmony and enlightenment. One was a warning, the other a longing. Dig deeper and you'll find these myths aren't just stories, they're cultural blueprints. Every era reinvents them to suit its anxieties. In the late 1800s, as industrialization reshaped the world, Mu emerged as a romantic counterpoint, a pre-technological Eden where humanity lived in balance with nature. Atlantis, by contrast, found new life during the Cold War, repurposed as a metaphor for nuclear annihilation. Even their geographies are telling. Plato placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the edge of the known world for ancient Greeks. Churchward anchored Mu in the Pacific, then the least explored ocean, a blank canvas for projection. But here's what binds them most tightly: the absence of proof. No definitive ruins, no sunken streets, no artifact stamped "Made in Mu" or "Property of Atlantis." And that's precisely why they endure. A discovered Atlantis would become just another archaeological site, its mystery drained away. Mu's power lies in its elusiveness, its refusal to be pinned down. These aren't just lost continents, they're Rorschach tests for the human imagination. Every generation peers into the depths and sees its own reflection. Hopes for transcendence, fears of collapse, the nagging sense that somewhere beneath the silt of time lies a truth we've forgotten. The irony, real drowned lands do exist: Doggerland, Sunderland, Beringia, yet they lack the grandeur of legend. Perhaps because their stories are rooted in slow upheaval, not single cinematic catastrophes. Mu and Atlantis offer something far more seductive: the idea that greatness can vanish in a day, that civilizations stand on fragile ground. They remind us that history isn't just what's written, it's what's whispered, what lingers in the gaps. And whether these places were real or imagined, their shadows stretch long across our collective memory, proof that sometimes the most powerful truths are the ones we can't quite prove. Off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island lies one of the ocean's most perplexing riddles: a sprawling, stair-stepped formation that looks like it was carved by human hands. Known as the Yonaguni Monument, this underwater structure stretches nearly 500 feet long, with razor-straight edges, perfect right angles, and what appear to be terraced platforms leading to a towering central stage. At first glance, it's easy to see why some researchers have called it the smoking gun of Mu, a tangible piece of that lost civilization preserved beneath the waves. But here's where the debate ignites: is this really the work of an ancient, advanced society, or just an incredible quirk of nature? Geologists have a clear take. Yonaguni is a textbook example of sandstone weathering. Japan sits in one of the most seismically active zones on Earth, where tectonic forces twist and fracture rock into dramatic shapes. The monuments, steps, and walls, they argue, are natural joint lines, places where the stone cracked under stress, then eroded over millennia by ocean currents. Even the seemingly precise angles can be explained by the way sedimentary rock breaks along parallel planes, creating uncannily geometric formations. Marine biologists add another layer. The coral and algae coating the structure have further sculpted its surface, enhancing the illusion of human design. And then there's the timeline. If Yonaguni were man-made, it would have to date back at least 10,000 years, a period when mainstream archaeology says humans in this region were hunter-gatherers, not monumental architects. But the alternative researchers aren't convinced. They point to features that defy simple geology, like two round holes drilled into the rock at precise intervals, or a straight 7-meter-long trench that looks suspiciously like a tool-carved pathway. Most striking is the so-called Turtle Mound, a flat-topped block with edges so sharp, it's hard to imagine waves alone could have shaped it. Some even argue the monument's layout mirrors known ceremonial sites from Japan's later Jomon period, suggesting a cultural connection. And then there's the location. Yonaguni sits near the Kuroshio Current, a potential maritime highway that could have linked ancient seafarers across the Pacific. Could this be a relic of a forgotten coastal civilization, one that matches the scattered descriptions of Mu? The truth might lie somewhere in between. Marine archaeologist Masaki Kimura, who's dived Yonaguni hundreds of times, believes it's a natural formation altered by human hands, a sacred site enhanced rather than built from scratch. He's documented what he claims are carvings of animals and human faces, though mainstream scholars dismiss these as pareidolia, our tendency to see patterns in randomness. Meanwhile, geologist Robert Schoch, famous for redating the Sphinx, agrees the structure is mostly natural but leaves room for an intriguing possibility. That ancient people might have recognized its awe-inspiring shape and repurposed it for rituals, blurring the line between nature and culture. What makes Yonaguni so compelling isn't just the question of its origin, but what it reveals about our own hunger for mystery. When we stare at those underwater cliffs, we're not just seeing rock, we're seeing a Rorschach test. Some find proof of lost civilizations, others a masterpiece of natural forces, and perhaps both perspectives hold a kernel of truth. After all, the ocean has always been humanity's greatest mirror, reflecting back not just what's there, but what we long to find. Whether Yonaguni is a piece of Mu's puzzle or a geological marvel, its real power lies in reminding us how much history remains written in water, not stone. Standing alone in the vast Pacific, Easter Island has long been a magnet for speculation. Its silent stone giants, the moai, gazing inland as if guarding a secret. To theorists of Mu, these statues aren't just Polynesian artifacts, they're potential relics of a vanished super-civilization. Some suggest Easter Island was a frontier outpost of Mu, a last refuge for its survivors after the cataclysm. The evidence they point to, the island's sheer isolation, its inexplicably sophisticated stonework, and legends of a founding people called the Hanau Ep, described as tall, light-skinned outsiders with advanced knowledge. Could these have been the remnants of Mu's priestly class, carrying fragments of their drowned world to this remote shore? Mainstream archaeology paints a radically different picture. Radiocarbon dating places human arrival on Easter Island around 1200 CE, far too recent for any connection to Churchward's 12,000-year-old Mu. The moai, researchers argue, are masterpieces of Polynesian engineering, not hand-me-downs from a lost continent. The Rapa Nui people who carved these statues left behind oral histories and petroglyphs detailing their work tools, techniques, even the names of individual carvers. And those mysterious Hanau Ep, linguistic analysis suggests the term likely refers not to a separate race, but to a social class or clan embroiled in the island's civil wars. Yet the debate gets twistier when you examine the moai's construction. Moving these multi-ton statues, some towering over 30 feet, would have required extraordinary ingenuity. Traditional accounts say the Rapa Nui used log rollers and rope, but experiments show this method would have rapidly deforested the island, matching the ecological collapse seen in pollen records. Mu enthusiasts seize on this as proof of outside help, arguing that Easter Island's inhabitants must have inherited advanced techniques from an elder culture. But archaeologists counter with a simpler explanation. The Rapa Nui were simply brilliant adapters, using lever systems, carved channels, and sheer communal effort to walk the statues upright, a method demonstrated in modern recreations. Then there's the Rongorongo script, Easter Island's undeciphered glyphs, etched onto wooden tablets. Some fringe researchers claim these symbols mirror motifs from hypothetical Mu hieroglyphs, suggesting a shared written language. But mainstream scholars note Rongorongo's stylistic parallels lie squarely within Polynesian artistic traditions, with possible influences from post-contact European writing. Even the tablets themselves may be a tragic clue. Dendrochronology shows the wood dates to after European arrival, hinting that Rongorongo could be a cultural response to colonization, not a relic of prehistory. What Easter Island truly offers isn't proof of Mu, but a lesson in how easily isolation breeds mystery. Cut off from the world, the Rapa Nui developed technologies and traditions that feel alien, even impossible to outsiders. Their achievements weren't borrowed, they were born of necessity, ingenuity, and a deep connection to their environment. And that's the irony. In searching for traces of a fictional continent, we risk overshadowing the very real marvels of Polynesian exploration. The moai weren't messages from Mu, they were monuments to human resilience, carved by people who crossed thousands of miles of open ocean without maps or compasses, finding an island smaller than Brooklyn and turning it into a civilization. If that's not advanced, what is? While Mu's legend brims with utopian visions of crystal cities and cosmic energies, its lesser-known counterpart Lemuria sprang from a far more mundane origin, Victorian scientists puzzling over lemurs. Yes, the fuzzy, big-eyed primates. In the 1860s, zoologists were baffled by how lemur fossils appeared in both Madagascar and India, but nowhere in between. To explain this distribution, biologist Philip Sclater proposed a since-sunken land bridge stretching across the Indian Ocean, which he whimsically named Lemuria. It was a sober geological hypothesis rooted in the era's limited understanding of plate tectonics. Yet within decades, this speculative landmass underwent a bizarre transformation, morphing from a scientific placeholder into a mystical lost continent, often tangled with Mu in the public imagination. Here's where the stories diverge. Unlike Mu, which emerged from fringe archaeology and spiritualism, Lemuria began as mainstream science before veering into the occult. When the theory of continental drift replaced land bridges in the early 20th century, Lemuria should have faded into obscurity. Instead, it was adopted and altered by figures like Helena Blavatsky, founder of Theosophy. In her secretive texts, Lemuria became a land of giant, egg-laying hermaphrodites, a third root race in humanity's spiritual evolution. Blavatsky's version borrowed snippets from Sclater's science but twisted them into an elaborate mythology, blending Hindu cosmology with racist pseudoscience about primordial giants. By the time James Churchward began writing about Mu, the lines between the two had already blurred. Both were framed as mother civilizations, both confirmed by dubious ancient texts, both framed as cautionary tales about societal collapse. The conflation didn't stop there. Pop culture mashed the myths together, from pulp magazines to Hollywood. In the 1930s, Lemuria and Mu began appearing interchangeably as settings for lost worlds and Nazi superweapons. Comic books like Challengers of the Unknown depicted Lemuria as a high-tech ruin, while B-movies like The Lost Continent borrowed Mu's cataclysmic tropes. Even today, video games and anime casually merge the two, depicting sunken continents with hybridized lore. The irony, neither myth resembles its original form. Sclater's Lemuria was never a continent, just a narrow land strip, while Churchward's Mu ignored plate tectonics entirely. What's revealing is how these tales filled opposite gaps in human understanding. Lemuria arose from a concrete puzzle in biogeography, only to be mysticalized when science moved on. Mu, meanwhile, sprang from spiritual hunger, later draped in pseudo-scientific trappings to seem credible. Together, they showcase our habit of turning unanswered questions into mirrors, reflecting whatever we fear or desire. Whether framed by zoologists or occultists, these lost lands tell us less about the past than about ourselves. The stories we cling to when facts feel insufficient, and the worlds we invent to explain the unexplainable. Among the most tantalizing artifacts waved as evidence for Mu are ancient maps like the infamous Piri Rise chart, a 16th-century Ottoman document depicting coastlines some claim match Antarctica's ice-free contours. Conspiracy theorists argue this proves lost civilizations like Mu had advanced cartography, mapping lands supposedly undiscovered until modern times. But let's peel back the layers. The Piri Rise map, compiled in 1513, explicitly notes its sources, earlier Arab, Portuguese, and even Columbus-era charts. Its Antarctica is likely a distorted South America, a common error in early maps where landmasses bled together, the resemblance to Antarctica's subsurface topography. Pure coincidence, a classic case of pattern seeking where random lines align with hindsight. Yet the Piri Rise is just one thread in a tangled web. Take the Buach map of 1737, which allegedly shows an ice-free Antarctica with eerie accuracy. Skeptics point out its creator, Philippe Buach, never claimed to depict a real continent. He was theorizing hypothetical southern landmasses based on contemporary guesses about land bridges. His Antarctica was speculative geometry, not secret knowledge passed down from Mu. Even more telling, actual early navigational charts, like those of Polynesians who crossed the Pacific centuries before Europeans, show no traces of a vanished continent. Their stick charts recorded waves and currents, not land that wasn't there. But here's where the plot thickens. While these maps don't prove Mu's existence, they expose a genuine mystery: how fragments of lost geography surface in unexpected places. Medieval Portolan sailors' coastal maps sometimes include phantom islands like High Brassel or St. Brendan's Isle. These weren't deliberate fakes but accumulations of myths, mirages, and scribble errors. Could Mu have entered cartography the same way? A misheard legend, a distorted account of real Pacific islands like Vanuatu's sunken reefs, repeated until it felt factual. The Zeno map of 1558, for instance, places Friesland, a non-existent North Atlantic island, alongside real territories. Centuries later, explorers still searched for it. The heart of the debate isn't just about ink and parchment. It's about how humans fill gaps in knowledge. Before satellites, cartography was part science, part storytelling. Maps blended hard-won navigational data with folklore, wishful thinking, and outright guesses. When we scrutinize them for traces of Mu, we're doing what generations before us did, projecting our desires onto the blank spaces. What these maps truly reveal isn't a lost continent, but the enduring power of the unknown to spark our imagination. After all, every "Here be dragons" scribbled in margins whispers the same question. What else might be waiting undiscovered beneath the waves? Somewhere between the cracks of science and the yearning for something greater, Mu found its second life, not as a sunken continent but as a spiritual beacon. By the mid-20th century, the legend had shed its crumbling archaeological pretenses and blossomed into something far more elastic, a cosmic allegory. New Age thinkers, channelers, and ufologists reshaped Mu into a symbol of humanity's lost unity, a civilization not just advanced in technology but in consciousness. They claimed its people communed with higher dimensions, harnessed crystal vibrations to heal, and even shared DNA with star visitors. This wasn't history, it was mythology repurposed for a disillusioned modern world desperate for transcendence. At the heart of this reinvention was the idea of ancestral memory, the notion that Mu's trauma lingers in our collective psyche. Psychics like Edgar Cayce, America's so-called sleeping prophet, wove Mu into their visions, describing it as a land where souls evolved through reincarnation before a great flood scattered them across the globe. Cayce's followers latched onto his readings, which bizarrely aligned with Churchward's claims despite no evidence the two ever crossed paths. The implication: both men were tapping into the same Akashic records, a universal archive of cosmic history. Never mind that Cayce also remembered past lives on Mars and Atlantis. Mu's allure was its specificity. It wasn't just another lost world, it was the motherland, a Pacific cradle where humanity first glimpsed enlightenment. Then came the crystals. In the 1970s, as quartz watches and silicon chips heralded a new technological age, New Age communities recast Mu's supposed crystal temples as energy hubs. Authors like Frank Joseph tied Churchward's vague descriptions to modern pseudoscience, claiming Mu's priests used piezoelectric stones to manipulate frequencies, cure disease, and even teleport. The irony is delicious. A civilization invented by a man who misunderstood Mayan glyphs was now credited with inventing laser-like tech, yet the metaphor resonated. Crystals ordered, luminous, and seemingly eternal became physical totems of Mu's imagined purity. Even today, holistic healers sell Lemurian seed crystals, allegedly programmed with ancient wisdom, despite geologists tracing these pink quartz rods to Brazilian mines. But the most audacious twist came from UFO circles. As whispers of government cover-ups and alien encounters spread in the 80s, Mu morphed again, this time into an interstellar colony. Conspiracy theorists like David Hatcher Childress proposed that Mu's people weren't just advanced. They were hybrids engineered by reptilian overlords or Pleiadian starseeds. The Pacific's lack of ruins, proof of a clean, possibly nuclear, exit. This fringe narrative found fertile ground in Japan, where UFO religions like the Aum Shinrikyo cult incorporated Mu into apocalyptic prophecies. The link between sunken continents and flying saucers wasn't accidental. Both tropes answered the same hunger, a desire to believe that someone, somewhere, once had all the answers and might still. What's striking isn't just how Mu's story bends, but how selectively its modern adherents treat its origins. Churchward's racist undertones, his depiction of Mu's superior, light-skinned rulers, are quietly scrubbed away. The colonial mindset that birthed the myth is repackaged as woke spirituality, a shared heritage for all. Online Facebook groups and TikTok shamans preach Mu codes, sound baths tuned to the lost continent's frequency, and guided meditations to reactivate your Lemurian DNA. It's a thriving economy of yearning where the less evidence exists, the more freely the legend can be remade. Underneath the glitter and channeled messages, though, lies a poignant truth. Mu's endurance as a spiritual concept reveals less about the past than about our present loneliness. In a fractured world of climate crises and digital alienation, the idea of a harmonious, nature-attuned civilization isn't just escapism, it's a reproach. Maybe we don't crave Mu because it was real, but because we desperately need it to become real. And that's the most fascinating twist of all. A fiction, retold enough times, begins to shape reality. From Sedona retreats to Bali workshops, people gather under Mu's banner not to dig up ruins, but to build something new, a community chasing the very unity the legend promises they once had. Mainstream archaeology doesn't just dismiss Mu, it systematically dismantles every pillar of its foundation. Start with the most glaring issue, the complete absence of physical evidence. Unlike real submerged sites like Dwarka or Pavloptri, which leave behind pottery, foundations, and tools, Mu's hypothetical location in the Pacific shows no traces of human habitation. Core samples from the seabed reveal only volcanic basalt and pelagic clay, not the crushed brick or worked stone you'd expect from a continent-spanning civilization. Even coral growth patterns, which can cling to ruins in shallow waters, show no interruption suggestive of artificial structures. It's as if Mu didn't just sink, it vanished without leaving a single footprint. Then there's the timeline problem. Churchward claimed Mu flourished 12,000 years ago, but this directly contradicts anthropological consensus. During that period, humans were Neolithic hunter-gatherers, barely transitioning to agriculture. The oldest known megalithic site, Göbekli Tepe, dates to around 11,000 years ago, a modest ritual complex, not the global superculture described in Mu's lore. Even more damning, the Pacific Islands weren't widely settled until 3,000 years ago. Polynesian navigation, while extraordinary, couldn't have been inherited from a civilization that supposedly collapsed millennia before their ancestors reached the open ocean. Archaeologists also highlight the dangers of diffusionism, the discredited idea that all cultural advances radiate from a single source. Churchward's claim that Mu seeded pyramids from Egypt to Mesoamerica ignores the glaring differences between these structures. Egyptian pyramids were smooth-sided tombs aligned with celestial precision. Mesoamerican step pyramids were temples for ritual sacrifice. Their shared shape isn't proof of connection. It's convergent evolution, like how bats and birds both evolved wings independently. Worse, diffusionist theories often erase indigenous innovation, reducing diverse cultures to passive recipients of superior knowledge. The Rapa Nui didn't need Mu to carve moe. They had centuries of Polynesian stone-working tradition. Perhaps the most telling critique is how Mu's narrative cherry-picks evidence while ignoring contradictions. Proponents point to Yonaguni's underwater formations, but omit that similar sandstone geometries exist globally, from Australia's wave rock to Jordan's Petra. They cite flood myths across cultures but disregard that these stories arise naturally in flood-prone regions: the Nile, the Tigris-Euphrates, the Yellow River. Even the sweet potato, often touted as proof of trans-Pacific contact, likely floated across the ocean on its own, carried by currents as many plants do. The persistence of Mu's myth reveals less about ancient history and more about modern desires, to simplify humanity's messy, disparate journey into a single heroic origin story. But real archaeology thrives on complexity, on recognizing that brilliance isn't monopolized by one lost race, but sparked again and again wherever human ingenuity meets necessity. The truth is, we don't need Mu to explain our past. The evidence we have of Polynesian voyagers, Inca engineers, Aboriginal astronomers is already extraordinary. And unlike a sunken fantasy, these achievements are still here, waiting to be seen. Among the most persistent threads in the Mu mythology are so-called out-of-place artifacts, objects that seem to defy conventional history, often hailed as smoking guns for lost civilizations. Take the infamous Ica stones of Peru, a collection of andesite rocks carved with bizarre scenes. Humans battling dinosaurs, advanced surgical procedures, even what some claim are maps of Mu itself. Discovered in the 1960s by a local farmer, these stones became a sensation when a Peruvian doctor named Javier Cabrera began collecting them, insisting they were relics of an ancient global civilization. But here's the catch. The farmer later admitted to carving them himself, inspired by comic books and textbooks. They're ancient scratches made with a modern dental drill. Yet despite the confession, the stones still circulate in fringe circles, held up as proof of Mu's forgotten knowledge. Then there's the underwater ruins near Japan's Okinawa, often dubbed the Yonaguni Monument's cousins. In the late 1990s, divers reported finding what looked like stepped pyramids and paved roads under the East China Sea. Tabloids ran wild, claiming these were the drowned streets of Mu. Geologists, however, quickly identified the structures as natural sandstone formations, shaped by tidal erosion and tectonic activity, the straight edges and right angles. A common result of how sedimentary rock fractures under stress. But the real giveaway was the lack of cultural debris, no pottery shards, tools, or bones, the telltale signs of human habitation. The pattern repeats with the so-called Baalbek megaliths in Lebanon, where some claim the 1,000-ton stone blocks could only have been moved by Mu's advanced technology. Never mind that Roman inscriptions and quarries confirm the site's construction in the 1st century CE, or the London hammer, a tool found in Texas limestone dated to the Cretaceous period until scientists revealed the wood handle was fresh and the ancient rock had simply formed around it. Time and again, these OOPArts crumble under scrutiny, victims of wishful thinking, clever hoaxes, or simple misdating. What's revealing is how these artifacts share a common life cycle. First, they're discovered under murky circumstances, often by someone with a financial or ideological stake. Then they're promoted by charismatic figures, a doctor, a self-taught archaeologist, a YouTube personality who frame academia's skepticism as a cover-up. Finally, when debunked, the artifacts don't disappear. They migrate into a shadow realm of suppressed evidence, where the lack of proof becomes proof of conspiracy. It's a closed loop, immune to disproof, but here's the deeper irony. The Pacific does hold genuine underwater mysteries, like Nan Madol's sunken canals or the coral-covered statues of Chuk Lagoon, yet these real wonders get overshadowed by Mu's spectre. Perhaps because they lack the grand narrative, the easy answers. Real archaeology is messy, incremental, often inconclusive. It doesn't offer crystal temples or interstellar ancestors, just fragments of ordinary people living, building, and sometimes vanishing. And in a way, that's more haunting than any myth. The silence of the past isn't a puzzle to solve, but a reminder of how much we'll never know. Stories of catastrophic floods ripple through nearly every ancient culture on Earth, each carrying eerie similarities to Mu's supposed demise. The Epic of Gilgamesh, etched onto Mesopotamian clay tablets over 4,000 years ago, tells of a great flood sent by angry gods, sparing only one man, Utnapishtim, who builds an ark to save his family and animals. Sound familiar? The Hebrew Bible's Noah mirrors this almost beat for beat, while Hindu texts describe Manu, warned by a fish avatar to construct a ship before the oceans swallow the land. The Aztecs spoke of the fourth sun ending in deluge. The K.H. Myers Popol Vuh recounts a storm so violent it turned people into fish. Even the indigenous Australians' Dreamtime stories tell of a time when the seas rose, drowning sacred sites. These aren't just coincidences, they're fragments of a shared human memory, one that Mu's legend taps into with uncanny precision. But what if these stories aren't about Mu at all, but something far more tangible? Around 12,000 years ago, as the last ice age waned, melting glaciers triggered a phenomenon called meltwater pulse 1b, a period when sea levels rose nearly 20 meters in just 5 centuries. That's enough to swallow entire coastlines, displacing early human settlements with terrifying speed. Archaeologists have found submerged villages off India's Gulf of Combat and Israel's Carmel coast, their stone tools and hearths preserved under layers of silt. The Black Sea, once a freshwater lake, transformed into a saltwater basin overnight when the Mediterranean burst through the Bosporus, an event some scholars link to the biblical flood. These weren't global cataclysms, but for the people living through them, they might as well have been. Imagine watching the ocean creep closer every year, your ancestral fishing grounds vanishing, your stories compressing desperation into myth. The genius of Mu's narrative is how it takes these real, localized disasters and weaves them into a single grand collapse. Churchward and his followers cherry-picked the most dramatic flood myths while ignoring crucial differences. The Inca, for instance, spoke of a flood sent by the god Viracocha, but their version ends with humanity emerging from caves, no lost continent required. Similarly, Norse mythology's Orgelmir describes a primordial giant whose corpse became the earth after drowning in his own blood, a metaphor for creation, not destruction. Mu's allure lies in its simplicity, one place, one event, explaining every flood story at once, but reality is messier. Cultures adapt shared experiences to their landscapes. Islanders describe waves, desert dwellers, endless rain. The flood archetype isn't a fingerprint left by Mu, it's humanity's collective response to living on a planet where water always wins. Science offers another twist. Beyond rising seas, the end of the Ice Age unleashed geological chaos. Earth's crust, freed from the weight of glaciers, rebounded in some places while sinking in others, triggering earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. The Storegga slide off Norway around 6,000 years ago sent a tsunami crashing into Scotland's coasts, leaving sediment deposits 20 meters above sea level. Could such events have inspired Plato's Atlantis or Churchward's Mu? Absolutely. But here's the catch: these disasters didn't happen simultaneously. They span millennia and continents, a slow motion unraveling rather than a single night of ruin. The flood myth's true power isn't in their uniformity, but in their adaptability, proof that humans have always tried to make sense of chaos, dressing raw fear in the robes of gods and fallen empires. So where does that leave Mu, not as a historical fact, but as a cultural echo? Its legend resonates because it mirrors our deepest anxieties about rising oceans, crumbling societies, the fragility of memory. When we hear these ancient flood stories today, we're not just recalling the past, we're rehearsing for the future. As modern sea levels creep upward again, Mu's myth feels less like a relic and more like a warning. The next great flood might not come from angry gods or cosmic energy. It might come from us, and this time there's no ark big enough to outrun it. The hunt for Mu didn't end with Churchward's books, it just got wet. In the 1930s, as the legend gained steam, a wave of would-be explorers mounted expeditions to the Pacific, armed with little more than depth charts and blind faith. One of the earliest was a Japanese naval officer, Captain Tsuji, who claimed to have found underwater ruins near the Ogasawara Islands, his evidence. Blurry sonar readings that geologists later identified as jagged volcanic ridges. Undeterred, American entrepreneur William Niven launched his own quest in the 1950s, dragging magnetometers across the Pacific floor off Mexico. He swore his instruments detected anomalies suggestive of buried structures, but when pressed, couldn't produce a single artifact. The pattern was clear. Every supposed breakthrough dissolved under scrutiny, leaving only ripples of wishful thinking. Then came the age of television spectacle. The 1970s saw a string of sensationalist documentaries, each promising to finally reveal Mu's secrets. One notorious special featured actors in lab coats analyzing supposed temple blocks dredged from the Pacific, later exposed as ballast stones from Spanish galleons. But the crown jewel of Mu-related hoaxes has to be the 1998 Discovery Channel special, The Lost Continent of Mu, which spliced footage of Yonaguni's natural formations with CGI recreations of crystal cities, blurring the line between science and fantasy. Critics slammed it as archaeological fan fiction, yet it racked up millions of views, proving Mu's grip on the public imagination. No discussion of underwater hoaxes would be complete without the Bimini Road, a row of submerged limestone blocks off the Bahamas that conspiracy theorists hail as a remnant of Mu's highway system. Discovered in 1968 by self-proclaimed psychic archaeologist J. Manson Valentine, the site became ground zero for Atlantis and Mu enthusiasts alike. But geologists have a simpler explanation: Beacrock. When ancient shorelines erode, they fracture along natural plains, creating eerily geometric shapes. Carbon dating places the Bimini stones at around 2,000 years old, far too recent for any lost civilization. Even Valentine's own team admitted the road showed no signs of tool marks or mortar. Yet dive tours still flock there, selling tickets to the ruins of Mu with a straight face. The 21st century brought new layers to the charade. In 2012, a viral YouTube video claimed Google Earth had spotted a giant underwater city near Micronesia, complete with grid-like streets. The discovery turned out to be a glitch in the sonar mapping algorithm, an artifact of data stitching, not drowned architecture. That same year, a French team announced they'd found pyramids off Cuba's coast at 600 meters deep. Headlines screamed "Mu found," until marine geologists pointed out the structures were irregular mounds typical of submarine landslides. The team quietly retracted their claims, but not before the story had circled the globe. What's fascinating isn't just the persistence of these hoaxes, but their formula. First, a tantalizing but ambiguous image, a sonar shadow, a strangely shaped rock. Next, a charismatic figure, a rogue scientist, a self-funded explorer declaring it proof of Mu. Then, the inevitable debunking, which does little to deter true believers. The cycle repeats because it feeds a craving no fact can satisfy, the hunger for a world more mysterious than our own. For every failed expedition, another springs up, armed with new tech and old dreams. Maybe that's Mu's real legacy, not a sunken continent, but the depths we'll plunge to believe in it. Meanwhile, actual marine archaeologists make quieter but staggering finds, like the 7,000-year-old village discovered off Canada's coast or the sunken Roman port of Neapolis in Tunisia. These sites lack Mu's glamour, but they offer something far more valuable: truth. They remind us that the ocean's real treasures aren't glittering utopias, but the ordinary, extraordinary lives of those who came before us. And perhaps that's enough. From the moment James Churchward's books hit shelves, Mu wasn't just a fringe theory, it was a story too tantalizing for fiction to ignore. The Lost Continent slithered its way into pulp magazines of the 1930s, where dashing adventurers uncovered its crystal-powered cities and fought Nazi occultists for its secrets. But Mu's big screen breakthrough came in 1984, when Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom hinted at its lore. The film's opening sequence features a nightclub named Club Obi-Wan, an Easter egg referencing a supposed Mu legend about Obi-Wan priests guarding ancient knowledge. Never mind that Churchward never mentioned such priests. Hollywood had already begun rewriting the myth. Video games embraced Mu's ambiguity even more boldly. The Tomb Raider series sent Lara Croft diving for its ruins, while Uncharted, Golden Abyss wove Mu's golden tablets into its treasure hunt. These portrayals share a common thread. Mu isn't just a setting, it's a narrative wildcard, a blank space where writers can project whatever tech or magic their plot demands. The Final Fantasy franchise, for instance, reimagined Mu as a floating sky continent in Final Fantasy III, swapping ocean trenches for clouds but keeping the trope of a fallen utopia. And let's not forget Call of Duty, Black Ops, which tied Mu's vril energy to zombie outbreaks, blending Churchward's pseudoscience with B-movie horror. Comic books, meanwhile, turned Mu into a playground for cosmic stakes. Marvel's Agents of Atlas introduced it as the ancestral home of Atlantis' rivals, while DC's Challengers of the Unknown depicted it as a prison for Lovecraftian gods. Even Japanese manga got in on the act. One Piece creator Eiichiro Oda admitted drawing inspiration from Mu for the Sky Island saga, where a lost civilization's legacy fuels wars. What's striking is how fluidly Mu morphs across mediums. In role-playing games like Terraria, it's a biome. In anime like Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, it's a high-tech colony. Each iteration files off the serial numbers, keeping the allure but ditching the baggage. Yet pop culture's greatest trick was making Mu feel inevitable. By saturating movies and games with its imagery, glowing crystals, submerged temples, cryptic maps, it created a feedback loop. Players and viewers who'd never heard of Churchward began recognizing these tropes as facts, assuming they stemmed from real archaeology. Assassin's Creed fans debated whether the Isu civilization was secretly Mu. Stargate enthusiasts linked its ancient aliens to Churchward's priestly rulers. The line between fiction and fringe history blurred until, for many, Mu stopped being a theory and became a shared language of mystery. That language isn't harmless. When Ancient Aliens dedicates episodes to Mu's suppressed technology, or mobile games like Ivani monetize Lemurian relic loot boxes, they reinforce a dangerous idea that indigenous cultures couldn't have built their own wonders. The real Polynesians who navigated the Pacific without compasses, the Maya who mapped the stars, their achievements get overshadowed by a myth that credits some hypothetical super-civilization. Mu's pop culture dominance reveals less about the past than about our present hunger for easy answers. We'd rather imagine a single, glamorous source for human genius than sit with the messy truth. Brilliance isn't inherited. It's earned again and again by ordinary people staring at the sea or the stars and daring to wonder what's beyond. James Churchward didn't just claim Mu influenced global architecture. He insisted its language was the mother tongue of humanity itself. According to his Naacal tablets, Mu's priestly class spoke a primordial language called Nagas, a sacred script that allegedly birthed every modern dialect from Mandarin to Mayan glyphs. He described it as a fluid, symbolic system where each character held layers of cosmic meaning, a linguistic skeleton key unlocking all others. It's a seductive idea, the notion that beneath humanity's dizzying array of tongues lies a single, elegant source. But when linguists dissect Churchward's claims, the theory collapses faster than a sandcastle in high tide. For starters, the field of historical linguistics has spent centuries mapping language evolution, and the evidence points in the opposite direction. Instead of a single origin, linguists trace over 7,000 living languages to dozens of independent families, groups like Indo-European, Sino-Tibetan, and Austronesian, with no demonstrable connection between them. Take the word for water. In Proto-Indo-European, it's wada. In Proto-Austronesian, danum. The sounds, structures, and grammatical rules diverge so radically that positing a common ancestor requires ignoring mountains of data. Even more damning, isolates like Basque or Ainu, languages with no known relatives, stubbornly refuse to fit any universal template. Churchward's linguistic leap hinges on cherry-picked similarities while ignoring glaring differences. He pointed to vague visual resemblances between Mayan numerals and Egyptian hieroglyphs as proof of shared Mu ancestry. But this ignores fundamental disparities like how Mayan writing is logosyllabic, combining symbols for words and sounds, while Egyptian hieroglyphs mix logograms with phonetic complements. It's like arguing English and Japanese must be related because both use the letter O, even though one's an alphabet and the other a syllabary. Real linguists use systematic comparison, tracking sound shifts and grammatical patterns across millennia. Churchward's method, more akin to finding shapes in clouds. Then there's the timeline problem. Modern humans began migrating from Africa around 60,000 years ago, carrying proto-languages that diversified over tens of millennia. Churchward's Mu, supposedly flourishing just 12,000 years ago, would have been far too late to seed this linguistic explosion. Even if Mu's people spoke a universal tongue, it couldn't have reached isolated tribes in the Amazon or Aboriginal Australians who'd already been separated for 40,000 years. The math simply doesn't add up, yet the most revealing flaw in Churchward's theory isn't its inaccuracy, it's its cultural bias. By claiming Mu's language birthed all others, he implicitly framed its speakers as superior, the enlightened progenitors of human thought. This mirrors 19th century Eurocentric views that positioned Sanskrit or Hebrew as original languages, relegating non-Western dialects to derivative status. Modern linguistics rejects this hierarchy, celebrating language diversity as a testament to human adaptability. The click consonants of Xhosa, the verb-heavy intricacy of Navajo, the tonal poetry of Vietnamese, these aren't corruptions of a lost mother tongue. They're brilliant innovations, each adapting to its environment like biological traits. So why does the myth of a universal language persist? Perhaps because it mirrors humanity's deepest longing to undo Babel's curse, to find a time before misunderstanding. From Tolkien's Elvish to Star Trek's universal translator, we keep dreaming of a world where words don't divide us, but the truth is more empowering. Our languages didn't fall from grace, they rose separately and gloriously from the inventive minds of people who refused to let the vastness of the world silence them. Mu's real linguistic legacy isn't a lost alphabet. It's the reminder that every time a child learns to say water in any tongue, they're not echoing an ancient priestly class. They're adding a new verse to an epic poem that will never end. The ocean hides more than just legends, it cradles real cities swallowed by the waves, their ruins waiting silently beneath the surf. Take India's Dwarka, a sprawling complex of stone walls and pillars submerged off the Gujarat coast. Hindu texts describe it as Lord Krishna's golden city, lost when he departed Earth. Archaeologists diving the site have recovered pottery, anchors, and structures dating back 3,500 years, proof of a bustling port swallowed by rising seas. Then there's Egypt's Heracleion, a grand harbor city that sank into the Mediterranean 1,200 years ago. Discovered in 2001, its colossal statues, gold coins, and hieroglyphic tablets reveal a cosmopolitan hub where Greek and Egyptian cultures mingled. These aren't myths, they're time capsules, their stories etched in tangible remnants. But here's where Mu's narrative runs aground. Dwarka and Heracleion share a crucial trait: they're cities, not continents. Their drowning fits known geological processes, rising tides, sediment shifts, or earthquakes dropping landmasses like Atlantis's smaller sibling, the real-life Santorini caldera. A city can vanish overnight, a continent cannot. The Earth's crust doesn't work that way. Continents are made of buoyant granite, floating on denser mantle rock like icebergs. They fracture and drift over eons, but they don't simply sink. Even the most catastrophic events like the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs left continents bruised, not obliterated. Scale is the killer clue. Mu's proponents describe a landmass rivaling Australia, yet the Pacific seafloor shows no continental crust, only volcanic chains and abyssal plains. Compare that to Doggerland, the real sunken land between Britain and Europe. When glaciers melted 8,000 years ago, rising waters drowned its hills and valleys, leaving behind fossilized forests and tool-scattered seabeds. Doggerland's existence is confirmed by core samples and sonar maps, evidence as solid as the North Sea's muddy bottom. Mu's hypothetical size would have left even clearer traces, granite peaks poking above the waves or a gaping hole in tectonic plates. Instead, silence. The difference between sunken cities and mythical continents isn't just size, it's storytelling. Cities drown with witnesses. Survivors pass down tales of waves engulfing homes, shaping myths like Japan's Yonaguni Monument, a crying stone said to mark a drowned village. Continents, though, their disappearances are plot devices, grand enough to symbolize cosmic punishments or fresh starts. Atlantis sinks in a day because Plato needed a parable about hubris. Mu vanishes because Churchward wanted a parable about lost wisdom. Real submersion is slower, messier, often invisible until centuries later, when a fisherman's net snags on a carved god's face and the past whispers back. That's the irony. By fixating on continent-sized fantasies, we risk overlooking the true marvels under the waves. From Greece's Pavloptria, a Bronze Age town preserved like a ghostly blueprint, to China's Lion City, its intricate arches intact under Qingdao Lake, these places offer something Mu never can, a bridge between legend and touchable history. They remind us that the sea doesn't just erase, it also keeps secrets waiting for the right moment to wash them ashore. And those secrets, though smaller than a lost utopia, are infinitely more alive. By the 1960s, Mu had shed its Victorian occult trappings and plunged headfirst into the psychedelic revolution. As LSD and psilocybin swept through counterculture circles, a new wave of mystics claimed these substances didn't just expand minds, they unlocked ancestral memories of Mu's golden age. Foremost among them was Timothy Leary, the Harvard psychologist turned psychedelic evangelist, who famously declared that his acid trips transported him to the Lemurian frequency, a vibrational plane where Mu's priests supposedly communed with cosmic energy. Leary wasn't alone. Psychonauts like Terence McKenna spun elaborate visions of fractal temples and interdimensional portals, framing Mu not as a lost continent, but as a neural archetype buried in humanity's collective unconscious. Suddenly, Churchward's pseudoscience found fresh life as a psychedelic prophecy, repurposed for an era obsessed with consciousness expansion. The connection wasn't entirely random. Psychedelics often trigger profound feelings of interconnectedness, what researchers call oceanic boundlessness, a sensation easily mapped onto Mu's utopian mythos. Users reported encountering entities who identified as Mu's survivors, delivering warnings about ecological collapse, or Chinese letter ing, cryptic geometrical codes. These experiences were vividly documented in publications like the Psychedelic Review, where one anonymous tripper described a vision of cities of light beneath the Pacific, humming with crystalline energy. Another recounted a journey through the Naga's library, where serpentine beings handed him scrolls inscribed with Mu's forgotten language. Skeptics dismissed these as drug-fueled hallucinations, but believers saw them as proof of something deeper, that psychedelics could peel back layers of time, accessing what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, a psychic wellspring where myths like Mu reside. This fusion of pharmacology and mythology reached its peak with the publication of The Cosmic Serpent in 1972. Authored by underground chemist Osley Stanley, the book claimed that DMT, the active compound in ayahuasca, acted as a molecular key to Mu's hidden history. Stanley's wildest assertion that the geometric patterns hallucinated during trips weren't just brain chemistry, but literal blueprints of Mu's crystal cities imprinted in human DNA. He pointed to indigenous Amazonian shamans who spoke of the motherland during ceremonies, describing it in terms eerily similar to Churchward's priestly elite. Never mind that these shamans had no cultural ties to the Pacific. Stanley argued their visions transcended geography, tapping into a universal memory bank. Scientists, unsurprisingly, rolled their eyes. Neurologists explained that psychedelics hyperactivate the brain's pattern recognition systems, causing users to project meaning onto random neural noise. They're entities and libraries, likely personifications of the brain's own filing system, misfiring under chemical stress. As for the shared visions of Mu, anthropologists noted that Churchward's books had seeped into counterculture lore, becoming a ready-made template for drug experiences. It was a feedback loop. The more Mu appeared in psychedelic literature, the more users expected, and thus saw its imagery during trips. Yet the psychedelic Mu connection left an indelible mark. Even after the 60s waned, its influence pulsed through New Age retreats and electronic dance culture. Goa trance albums sampled Leary's lectures about Lemurian awakening, while ayahuasca ceremonies in Peru incorporated invocations to Mu's crystal grid. The irony is rich. A legend born from colonial pseudoscience became a sacrament for anti-establishment spirituality, its contradictions smoothed over by the warm glow of expanded consciousness. Whether these experiences revealed objective truth or simply the human mind's boundless creativity, one thing was certain: Mu had transcended archaeology. It was no longer a place, but a state of mind, a beacon for those convinced that the deepest mysteries lie not in the ocean's depths, but within. Geologists and historians have reached a unanimous verdict: Mu never existed. The evidence is overwhelming. No continental crust matching Churchward's descriptions lies beneath the Pacific, no artifacts bear its name, and no credible records predate its 19th century invention. Plate tectonics confirms continents don't vanish without trace. They leave fingerprints in rock formations and fossil records. Yet Mu's legend thrives not because of evidence, but because it speaks to something deeper than fact, a collective yearning for lost grandeur. Psychologists call this nostalgia for a golden age, a universal human tendency to romanticize the past as purer or wiser. Mu's appeal lies in its simplicity, a single, elegant explanation for humanity's scattered myths and ruins. It's easier to imagine one enlightened civilization seeding pyramids across the globe than to accept the messy reality that humans innovated independently again and again in isolation. Cultural anthropologists point to another factor, the myth gap. When scientific explanations feel sterile or incomplete, people fill the void with stories that offer meaning. Mu's narrative of a spiritually advanced society destroyed by its own hubris mirrors modern anxieties about climate change and nuclear war. It's no coincidence that interest in lost continents spikes during periods of societal stress, like the Cold War or the climate crisis. The legend becomes a mirror, reflecting our fears of collapse and hopes for redemption. Even the term motherland taps into primal desires for belonging, a prelapsarian world where humanity lived in harmony with nature and each other. Skeptics often frame Mu's persistence as a failure of education, but the truth is more nuanced. Humans aren't purely rational creatures, we're storytellers. Archaeology can tell us how the Easter Islanders carved their moe, but it can't satisfy the hunger for mystery, the what if that fuels exploration. Mu endures because it lives in that liminal space between fact and fantasy, a blank canvas for projection. In an age of satellite imagery and deep-sea drones where few frontiers remain uncharted, Mu offers the illusion of something left to discover. It's not a historical truth, but a psychological necessity, a reminder that wonder still has a place in a world stripped of secrets. The irony is rich. The very science that debunked Mu also explains why we cling to it. Cognitive dissonance theory shows how people reject facts that contradict deeply held beliefs, especially when those beliefs fulfill emotional needs. For some, accepting Mu's fictional status feels like surrendering magic to mundanity. So the legend adapts, dodging disproof by migrating to realms where evidence can't follow, into psychic channeling, alternate dimensions, or government conspiracies. It's a survival mechanism, ensuring the myth outlives every attempt to bury it. What Mu ultimately reveals isn't hidden history, but the human condition. We're pattern-seeking creatures wired to connect dots even when no lines exist. The real story isn't beneath the Pacific. It's inside us, a testament to our boundless imagination, our hunger for meaning, and our refusal to let the unknown stay that way. Science may have closed the book on Mu as geography, but as a mirror for our dreams and dreads, that tale is still being written. If Mu wasn't a sunken continent or a spiritual homeland, could it be something even stranger, like a colony built by ancient aliens? This fringe theory gained traction in the 1960s when authors like Erich von Däniken blended Churchward's myths with speculative extraterrestrial lore. Their argument hinged on two tantalizing claims. First, that Mu's supposed technology, crystal energy, flying machines, was too advanced for any human civilization of the time, and second, that indigenous Pacific legends spoke of sky gods descending to teach humanity. Proponents pointed to the Dogon people of Mali who knew of Sirius B, a star invisible to the naked eye, as evidence of alien contact. Why couldn't Mu's priests have been star travelers, seeding knowledge before vanishing into the cosmos? The problem: these theories rely on a flawed premise that ancient people couldn't have achieved sophistication without outside help. Take Nan Madol, the Micronesian city built on artificial islets. Mainstream archaeologists attribute its construction to skilled engineering and communal labor, but alien enthusiasts insist the basalt columns are too precisely stacked for primitive tools. This narrative not only dismisses indigenous ingenuity but cherry-picks cultural details. The sky gods in Polynesian lore, like the Hawaiian deity Lono, were spiritual beings, not literal astronauts. And the Dogon's astronomical knowledge, later research revealed their Sirius lore likely came from European visitors in the 19th century, not extraterrestrials. Then there's the inner Earth hypothesis, the idea that Mu wasn't destroyed but relocated, its civilization retreating into vast subterranean caverns. This theory borrows from Hollow Earth legends, where advanced societies like Agartha or Shambhala allegedly thrive beneath our feet. In the 1940s, pulp magazines spun tales of Nazi expeditions to Antarctica seeking Mu's underground cities, while modern conspiracy forums claim reptilian beings, Mu's true rulers, still manipulate surface events. The appeal is obvious. If Mu couldn't be found underwater, maybe it was hidden inside all along. Geophysicists quickly dismantled the logistics. Earth's interior reaches thousands of degrees with pressures that would crush any conceivable structure. Seismic waves map our planet's layers as clearly as an MRI scans tissue. There are no hidden continents or cavern networks, yet the theory persists, buoyed by fictional touchstones like Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth or the Netflix series Inner Earth. It's a testament to how easily fringe ideas mutate when facts fall short, transforming a drowned utopia into an underground kingdom, then a dimensional gateway, always one step ahead of disproof. What unites these alternate myths, alien, subterranean, or interdimensional, is their function as narrative escape hatches. When archaeology fails to validate a myth, the goalposts shift. No ruins on the ocean floor, they must have been beamed aboard a mothership. No geological traces, the civilization moved to a higher vibrational plane. This elasticity makes Mu endlessly adaptable, a Rorschach blot for whatever mystery we crave, and that's the real allure, not proof but possibility. In a universe where we've mapped every mountain on Earth but still ponder dark matter, Mu becomes a placeholder for the unexplained, a vessel for the stories we're not ready to let go of, no matter how deep science drills. Stories of lost continents like Mu persist not because they fit neatly into history books, but because they serve as emotional blueprints for humanity's deepest fears and aspirations. At their core, these myths function as cautionary tales about hubris, a theme as old as civilization itself. Consider how Mu's supposed downfall mirrors modern anxieties, a society so advanced it tampered with forces beyond its control, only to be wiped clean by nature's fury. This narrative isn't just entertainment, it's a psychological safety valve. When we hear about Mu's crystal cities crumbling under tidal waves, we're really confronting our own vulnerability in an age of climate change and nuclear brinkmanship. The parallels are unmistakable. Just as Mu's priests allegedly harnessed energies they couldn't contain, today's scientists grapple with artificial intelligence and genetic engineering, powerful tools that could either elevate or obliterate us. The myth endures because it transforms abstract dread into a tangible story, letting us rehearse disaster from the safety of imagination. Yet Mu's staying power isn't solely rooted in fear. It also thrives as a metaphor for cultural memory, the way civilizations preserve and distort their own origins. Indigenous Pacific cultures have oral traditions of great floods and ancestral homelands beneath the waves, from Hawaii's Kumulipo chant to the Maori story of Tihono Werua, a sunken land where spirits reside. These aren't literal histories, but narrative vessels carrying collective trauma. When European colonizers like Churchward co-opted and distorted these stories into Mu, they unintentionally revealed a universal truth. All cultures construct mythic pasts to explain their present. The irony is rich. A fabricated continent became a mirror, reflecting how societies stitch together identity from fragments of memory, real or imagined. Even the fiercest skeptics must admit, Mu's legend demonstrates how myths, however fictional, shape real-world beliefs and behaviors. Beyond warnings and memories, Mu's greatest allure lies in its utopian promise. Every generation rediscovers the myth and remolds it to fit contemporary ideals. For Victorians, it was a spiritual Eden free from industrial grime. For 1960s counterculture, it became a psychedelic commune vibrating with cosmic harmony. Today's wellness influencers frame Mu as a holistic paradise where humans lived in perfect sync with nature. This chameleon-like quality speaks to a profound human longing, not just for a golden age, but for the possibility of reclaiming it. The irony is poignant. While archaeologists dig through layers of pottery and bones to reconstruct incremental human progress, Mu offers instant grandeur. A prelapsarian world where war, poverty, and ecological ruin never existed. Of course, no such place ever did, but the fantasy persists because it's antidote to the messy, uneven arc of real history, the most fascinating twist. Mu's myth may be evolving again. In an era of deepfake technology and algorithmic realities, the line between fact and fiction grows thinner by the day. Online communities now treat lost continents not as metaphors, but as literal truths suppressed by shadowy elites. Conspiracy forums dissect satellite images for anomalies, while alternate history YouTube channels stitch together cherry-picked artifacts into proof of advanced prehistory. This isn't just misinformation, it's mythology adapting to digital soil. Where Churchward had to publish books, modern Mu believers crowdsource their lore across TikTok stitches and Discord threads. The packaging changes, but the human impulses remain identical. To find patterns in chaos, to seek masters behind the curtain, to believe we're inheritors of something greater than what's visible. Ultimately, Mu's true value lies not in what it says about the past, but what it reveals about ourselves. These stories are cultural thermometers, measuring our collective temperature, our fears of collapse, our guilt over progress, our hunger for transcendence. The next time you encounter a YouTube video about hidden histories or a wellness guru invoking ancient Lemurian wisdom, pause and ask not whether it's true, but why it resonates now. The answer will tell you less about sunken continents than about the tides of human hope and despair that keep them forever floating just beyond reach. Even if Mu remains a legend, the tools to hunt for its traces are evolving faster than Churchward could have imagined. Cutting-edge deep-sea drones like the University of Rhode Island's Hydronaut now map the ocean floor with millimeter precision, revealing everything from hydrothermal vents to forgotten shipwrecks, yet not a single column or pyramid. These robotic explorers use multi-beam sonar that slices through darkness like underwater lidar, creating 3D reconstructions so detailed they can distinguish a Coca-Cola can from an amphora. But after decades of scanning the Pacific's abyssal plains, the verdict is unambiguous. No continental crust, no sprawling ruins, just endless stretches of basalt and sediment. That hasn't stopped researchers from pushing deeper. Advanced submersibles like Alvin and DSV limiting factor, the same craft that reached the Mariana Trench, now carry spectral analyzers capable of detecting artificial materials in seabed samples. Imagine combing the ocean floor for traces of worked metal or alloys unknown to nature, the kind Mu's hypothetical crystal tech might leave behind so far. Zero hits, even more revealing, are sediment cores drilled from the Pacific's oldest layers. If a continent sank 12,000 years ago, its soil would have left pollen, charcoal, or microplastics had they existed. Instead, cores show only volcanic ash and plankton skeletons, silent witnesses to an ocean that's been barren of land for millions of years. Yet technology's greatest gift to the Mu mystery might be its ability to reinterpret old myths with new context. Machine learning algorithms now cross-reference flood legends from 37 Pacific cultures, analyzing linguistic patterns and climatic data. Early findings suggest these stories cluster around real events like the Storaga Slide tsunami 8,000 years ago, but show no shared memory of a single cataclysm. Meanwhile, isotope analysis of Easter Island statues confirms their rock was quarried locally, dismantling claims they were ferried from a sunken homeland. Even the sweet potato's genome has spoken. Its journey from South America to Polynesia likely involved natural drift, not Mu's navigators, the wild card. Artificial intelligence's growing knack for reconstructing lost histories. Projects like DeepMind's Ithaca can predict gaps in ancient Greek inscriptions with 90% accuracy. Apply that to fragmented Lemurian lore, and we might finally trace how Churchward's myth mutated across decades of retelling. But here's the catch: technology can debunk, not confirm. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence until you've scoured every inch of an ocean twice Earth's landmass. And that's Mu's real legacy. Not a place to discover, but a frontier that keeps receding, always one breakthrough ahead of our grasp. Perhaps the most poetic twist lies in satellite archaeology. From orbit, sensors like NAS and MODIS detect subtle chlorophyll changes that reveal submerged structures in shallow waters. They've located Roman villas beneath wheat fields and Mayan cities under jungle canopies, but Mu's hypothetical landmass would have sunk in waters 20 times deeper. Even if Atlantis-seeking billionaires like Ray Dalio fund 1,000 deep-sea probes, the laws of plate tectonics won't bend for fantasy. The Pacific story is written in magma and subduction zones, not drowned spires. So where does that leave us? With a paradox: the better our tools, the smaller the myth's hiding places become. Yet Mu endures because the deepest trenches aren't in the ocean, they're in our hunger for wonder. When an AI someday reconstructs Churchward's face from diary photos, or a drone films yet another empty abyss, the legend won't die. It'll just pivot again, whispering that the truth is buried deeper, hidden stranger, waiting for probes we haven't dreamed of yet. And maybe that's the point. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, just sailed endlessly under stars older than any myth. Mu's enduring grip on our imagination isn't about sunken temples or lost technology, it's about what the legend reveals about us. Strip away the crystal cities and cosmic priests, and what remains is a story we've told ourselves for centuries. The dream of a wiser, more unified past, a cautionary tale about the fragility of greatness, and the unshakable hope that somewhere, hidden beneath the waves or buried in forgotten texts, there's proof we were once more than we are now. That's the real magic of Mu. It doesn't need to be real to feel true. Like all great myths, it holds up a mirror to our deepest fears and wildest aspirations, reflecting back the things we've lost and the things we're still desperate to find. But here's the twist. The most fascinating historical mysteries aren't the ones with tidy answers, they're the puzzles that keep us questioning. Think of the Voynich manuscript's unreadable script, the Nazca Line's colossal desert designs, or the Antikythera mechanism's ancient gears, precision engineered centuries before their time. These enigmas don't just tease us with their secrets, they remind us how much history is still unwritten, how many stories are waiting to be uncovered or reimagined. Maybe that's why Mu persists. It's not a destination but a doorway, an invitation to keep exploring, to stay curious, to wonder what else might be lurking in the shadows of our understanding. So what do you think? Could there be a kernel of truth behind the legend, a real disaster or civilization that inspired the myth? Or is Mu pure fiction, a blank canvas we've painted with our own hopes and fears? Drop your theories in the comments, because the best part of any mystery isn't solving it, but sharing the journey. And who knows, maybe the next great discovery won't come from a dusty archive or a deep-sea drone, but from a spark of insight in these very conversations. After all, history isn't just found, it's made, one question at a time. As the ocean keeps its secrets and the past whispers just beyond reach, one thing's certain: the human love affair with the unknown is far from over. Whether you're a skeptic or a true believer, Mu's legacy isn't in the rocks or the waves, it's in the sheer, unstoppable thrill of the hunt. So keep looking. Keep questioning, and above all, keep wondering what else might be out there, waiting for its story to be told.